Hey, Mike Raine here with Canadian Musician Magazine. Right now, in the offices of Entertainment One Music here in downtown Toronto, actually in the office of Chris Taylor, the head honcho who is not around. But right now, of course, if you ever recognize them already, Simon, Dave from, of course, the Strumbellas, who have one of the most hotly anticipated albums of the year coming out in a couple of weeks here. Rattlesnake, of course, the follow-up to the massive album Hope and the inescapable single Spirits, and which I'm sure you guys are getting a lot of that kind of thing right now. But anyways, guys, just thanks a lot for doing this. How you doing?
We're doing great. Thank you, and thanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
So I'm going to start with the obvious question, kind of just get it out of the way, because I'm sure you've been asked it a million times already and are going to be asked it a million times again throughout the next couple of weeks as you're doing press for the new album. But of course, Hope was a huge album as a whole. Spirit was, like I said, an inescapable single, not just here in Canada, but also in the US. So kind of the obvious question for that is, like, when it comes time to, particularly for you, Simon, to write the new songs for what would become Rattlesnake, I want to ask, is that in your head, or how it affects coming into the new album? I'm sure it's there in some way, but just kind of what impact, how that manifests itself for you when you kind of entered the new writing cycle.
That's a great question, and the answer is twofold. One is there's always a little bit of pressure. I mean, your record label and your team and your friends and your bandmates and everybody. Of course, everybody wants to have more success, and we want to even take it to the next level. So there's always that pressure, but the honest truth is that I just want to impress myself first. Yeah. When it comes to writing songs, I only send out the songs that I think are cool first, that then go to the band and go to my mom and go to my grandma and go to my friends to see if they like it. So ultimately, the most pressure is me sitting on my computer going, dude, you got to, like, is this cool? Do you think it's cool? Do you love it? Do you come back to it every day to listen to it? And once that is, when I feel good about that, the rest, I feel zero pressure from the world or from anybody else, because I just want to make cool music that I'm excited to show everybody. I'm excited to show the label. I'm excited to show all the fans. I'm excited to show Dave, because I think it's cool. Yeah. So hopefully everyone else does. And if not, I'm going to start a dog walking business. So yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah. Dave, for you, because you're kind of in a different part of that equation. So like when Simon brings you the new songs, having, of course, also experienced the huge success that you guys had off the last record, how does it manifest itself for you and the rest of the band? Because you're kind of at Simon's will as far as what he wants to write, know what I mean? So like when he brings you new songs, are you doing a like, just what's the thought process in your head?
Yeah, when Simon sends songs, it's almost always really exciting. Like occasionally he'll send us like a song called Roller Skate Disco, or like what was that Lamborghini song called? And you just think like, all right, Simon's just having a week, and we just need to let him do his thing. But almost always, you get it, and you're like, wow, this is groovy, and I could see this going in this direction. I could see it going. A demo sort of by definition always has so much potential, and it always just sets me kind of imagining the things that it could be. So no, it's nerve-wracking putting out any one of our albums, perhaps especially this one, but it's mostly just exciting. Yeah.
From across the first three albums, you guys had kind of that, I'd say on a musical level, but also obviously on a commercial level, that kind of step-by-step commercial success that any band in this day and age longs for and has the opportunity to do across multiple albums, which is, a different kind of conversation in a way. But you guys have had that from album to album. Each one has kind of done better than the last. But then when one just takes that kind of massive step and reaches that level that, frankly, few bands, when in the grand scheme of things, few bands are going to have. So like, where do you go from that? Like, do you think about this new album in that sense of like, all right, where do we want to take it in that regard? You know what I mean? Or where do we hope it takes us in that regard? You know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean. And the truth is, I have a hole inside of me that is just never satisfied. So when you say, where do you want to take it next? The answer is always, we want to be Imagine Dragons or Coldplay or The Killers or a worldwide household name that your mother knows who we are, your kids know who we are, and not in terms of like, oh, we want to be these famous guys, but just in terms of like, we want our music to be throughout the whole world for people just to enjoy. That's, for me, that's the ultimate goal of any songwriter or artist, is just to have as many people listen to it as possible. So that's basically it. When we make our music, it's literally like, let's make music that's super filled with integrity. Like we comb the lyrics. Like we comb the lyrics and go, dude, were you trying to appease to an audience with this lyric? And I'll be like, oh, maybe I was. And so let's change it and make it real. So 100%. But we want the sky's the limit. We want to go as high up as we can go before people start saying, they suck. They're done. So, but we want to push it as far as we can go, eh?
Yeah. And I feel like there's like a thing that happens. I mean, whether it's in sports or any kind of creative pursuit or in business, like where when the arrow points up, everything is kind of good, and when it starts to point like parallel or down, people start feeling nervous. So like I like the energy that we have in not just in our band, but in all the people we work with right now. And it feels good to be, sky's the limit. And most people, I guess, most bands at a certain point level off or start to kind of repeat themselves or whatever. And I don't think that's what we're doing right now. Maybe that's a comfortable place to reach at some point, but I'm glad we're not there yet. So, happy to have that arrow pointing up, I think.
Frankly, it's refreshing to actually hear a band just be open, having that ambition and being open about that ambition. I feel it's almost become almost cliched to be like, we're just happy to make music kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? You don't see that many bands that are open, like, yeah, we want to be a worldwide band. And like, I think that's awesome. And it reminds me of something. Do you guys know Joel Carrier from Dino Records? Or have come across him at any point? The dude who started Dino Records. And I remember him telling me in a conversation one time, something kind of he always, I guess you could say, warns his bands about is being complacent in being what he called Canada big. You know what I mean? Just like you reach a comfortable level where you can, go fill mid-sized venues across Canada, and you make, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can make a good, sustainable living doing that. But he's always cognizant about bands being okay with getting to that point and just staying at that point. And it sounds like that's something that has always been, it sounds like something you guys aren't okay with or aren't complacent about. You guys want to go beyond that. Has that been the ambition from the start? Is it something that you found was there once you started reaching next steps and were like, all right, what's the next one? Or was it from the start, like, let's make this as big as we can? Know what I mean?
Pretty much from day one, it was, how big can we go? Playing the live broadcast of the Junos was a huge goal for us right off the jump.
Yeah.
In the first album, it was, how do we get to play on that TV show? Right now, it's the Grammys. I will not rest until I just get to be on that Grammy stage. And I only say that because the Junos was the number one because we're Canadian, but the Grammys, because, growing up, we watched two things, the Junos and the Grammys. So those are just the two things. How people are nostalgic and you want to do the things that when you're a kid, like I always dreamed about doing the late shows. Yeah. So, when we got to do some of those, we did Kimmel and Conan and Colbert, and those were massive highlights for us, right? And just because when I was a kid, the same reason when I go to California, I'm always like, this is so cool. Christian Slater filmed Gleaming the Cube in this town. This is awesome. So I have these childhood dreams that I'm still trying to fulfill.
Yeah. And I think I like it. It must be the case that other artists need to worry about like selling out or like sounding not like themselves. And I just don't think we have this problem. Like even if we wanted to, like we'll be sitting in the studio and we'll be like, let's make this the biggest, poppiest, like, let's get big drums, like, let's, we do it and we take it to 110%, and then we listen back and it sounds like a Strumbellas record. Like I think we'll always be on some level like a scrappy farmers market folk band from the small towns outside of Toronto, and so I think sometimes about, not that I'm comparing us to Paul McCartney, but I think sometimes about like Paul McCartney would for sit down to write a song and he would rip off the Beach Boys, or he'd rip off Chuck Berry, or or whoever he was thinking about at the time, and it always just sounded like him. So I think there's like something built into how, like, we can't be, I don't know, like a cool LA pop band if we wanted to. So I think like we can push that, it feels anyway to me like we can push that pedal to the metal and we still end up kind of sounding like us. So, and I hope our fans see that too, because I think the connection is the same.
I just totally agree with where you're coming from there, and I hear it on the new record Rattlesnake, and it's obvious in the lead-off single Salvation. And like I was listening back over the last couple of days, because I'd be talking to you guys, obviously I was listening back to Hope a bunch of times. It's like, Jesus, this is a good record, but it's just full of like those big anthemic choruses with the big group vocals, and it's just such a pleasurable album to listen to. You know what I mean? And I was hoping, again, it becomes one of those cliches with bands where it's like when they have a big album and they're like, and then people are asking how the new album compares to that one, and the cliche becomes, we don't want to make X album part 2, and they go off, and if you're Mudford and Sons, you go make a generic indie rock record instead of what you did. But it sounds like you guys, like you were saying, you're just confident in your sound, and you're like, let's perfect this thing that we've been building up. And it sounds like that's what you did on Hope and what you're doing again here. And to me, that seems more logical, or it seems, because it's like, if you made a record, regardless of what it did commercially, you made that record because that's what your sound is. Know what I mean? You made that record because that's what you like to make. So it seems like it would almost be, the more contrived thing would be to go totally off in the left field, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I would put it like slightly differently, which is like our sound is almost like the result of us not quite getting what's in our heads. Like, yeah. You would agree with that, right? Like that we like are always trying to get this perfect, biggest, most fun record, and we get, like the reach always exceeds the grasp, right? Like we can almost get there, and then we listen back, and sometimes we're really excited, and sometimes we're really like, we didn't quite get you. Like, you go through all these emotions, and so it's not so much like, hey, we got it, we have our sound, let's do it again. It's more like, each album we're trying to get there to the sounds in our head, and we never quite get there. It always it always escapes you a little bit, and you get further and it gets further away, and you get further and it gets further away. So that's kind of what I think in some ways our sound is like, always the sound of us like not quite getting there, but in a way that I think like nobody ever gets there.
Yeah.
But you're also right in saying that you'll probably never hear a Strumbellas song without acoustic guitar and gang vocals. Yeah. So you're right. We are doing what you're saying, but gang vocals will always exist in our sound. So we're probably not going to put out a disco record with one vocal on the top. Mm-hmm.
Is because you're alone, well, I assume you're alone when you're writing the songs, generally speaking. Is that those gang vocals, that sound, is that in your head when you're writing, or you're writing more from a singer-songwriter point of view, and then you bring it to the guys and it's like, how do we build this up? You know what I mean?
I think that's two answers to that. One, I think what actually holds some songs back is my voice. I hate the sound of my voice as a singer. So immediately it always comes down to gang vocals. Even in the demo, when I do demos, it's like acoustic guitar to lay down the track, my lead vocal, and then I'll do 20 gangs. Myself going like this in like falsetto voice. I'll literally be like, I got guns in my head. I'll like, my demos have my voice 20 times in weird ways, just because I'm like, I know my vocal can't handle the lead, so I need to make gang vocals. Yeah.
I'm surprised to hear you say that just about your own voice. Personally, I think you have an excellent voice, but again, because I've been listening to Hope a bunch the last few days, so a line that stuck out to me in the song War is, what is it? I don't sing well, but I have heart.
Yeah, I think that's it. I'm just never gonna be that guy, like, who wins the voice and it's just I just don't have that professional, awesome singing voice. It's just kind of scrappy and half a step out of tune.
But this is what I'm talking about, right? Like the sound that you want from your voice is always like a little bit, it's just not quite. There's like a way in which we're creatively dissatisfied that is motivating, I think. Like we're not like, oh, awesome, I just did it. It sounds great, nailed that. Okay, see you later, guys.
Yeah. Like sometimes I think about like Kurt Cobain, and I'm like, dude, like I know that you were really troubled in your life and stuff, but like I wish you could have somehow have ever appreciated how literally soulful your natural voice was, or Elvis Presley, or Rod Stewart, or Freddie Mercury. Like these legends, these voices, they had everything going for them. They had the great songs, and like they had the most beautiful voices, and I've always just wished I had that, and I just don't think that's in the cards for us. But we're doing our best with gang. We just put lots of gang vocals on top. We're gonna start doing a lot of more guest vocals.
For Rattlesnake, when did the recording start in earnest, and where did you guys go to do it? Were you working in your own space this time, or going? I'm just gonna throw it out there. Where were you guys working on this record?
The most fun first part of the record, we did the first 3 songs at Tragically Hip Studio.
Oh, nice. In
the bathhouse.
Yeah.
At the bathhouse. And why that was kind of fun was because our producer and co-producer are from LA.
Okay.
So it was great to bring them to small town Canada and make the first 3 songs there. And they loved it. They were like, this is awesome, small town Canada. We're getting the full experience. We'd go jump in the lake.
Yeah.
What lake is that? Like...
I should know this. It's Ontario, isn't it?
Is it Ontario?
Yeah.
So,
I should know this because my in-laws live on Amherst Island, which is literally in the lake. So it's really bad. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Ontario.
So they go jump in the lake, so that was a lot of fun just to see them in small town Canada and give them the full experience. And then the rest of the record we did right downtown Toronto at Revolution Studios, which we would like to say, I think confidently, is a 10 out of 10 studio, and we loved it. We loved it. So.
The bathhouse is an all analog studio, is it not? Or at least it used to be. Is it still?
Not anymore.
It used to be, and it's funny. They have when you go in the studio, they have a giant 8 reel
reel-to-reel,
and like a really expensive one. Like when that was really popular, they bought it, and then I think like soon after, digital started happening, so they just had this really expensive reel-to-reel that was just sitting in the studio. That no one, I don't think, used a lot because digital was starting to happen. So, But yeah, it was, I think, at one point.
Who were the producers you mentioned? Who were you working with?
So the main producer is a guy named Tim Pagnotta. And just to give you a reference, he produced "Shut Up and Dance with Me," and also the Neon Trees. Here we go again. I'm gonna look and be more than friends. So he did those 2 songs, which is what obviously caught our ears. And he's done a million things, but he's truly a audio guru. It actually made me realize that I probably won't ever be a sound engineer because of the levels. Like it makes me, I'm sitting in the studio and like this record, I honestly said to Tim beforehand, I was like, Tim, I'm going to be straight with you. I'm kind of depressed right now. I'm not in a great mood. I probably won't be here for a lot of the record. I'm going to come in, we're going to have a powwow in the morning, and then I'm probably going to split and go do meditation and exercise. And he just took the reins. But part of that why I didn't want to be there is because the extent that engineers and producers and drummers go to find drum sounds is so maddening. Like they would spend a half a day on a snare sound, and me and Dave would be in the back going like, just put a mic up to the snare. But they would go over, they'd be like, try and 60. We hired in a drum tech on top of all these people. Like we were just like, I found it quite hysterical. Like that was the running joke in the studio. Like, you guys sure you got the snare sound after the 15th snare? Like,
yeah. Didn't he bring in some? I mean, it wasn't a 19th. He had some marching drum thing that I don't know. They bring in all these 80-year-old drums, and
and then when it came
sounds
down,
like a kick drum,
and then when it came down to an acoustic guitar, they'd be like, yeah, just pick whatever mic, whatever. Can we just get we're just gonna edit it anyways, so who cares? So yeah. Don't even get me started on drum techs.
I have these like 40-year-old analog synthesizers that I really like from the late 70s and the 80s and stuff. And yeah, when it comes to synthesizers, they're like, we'll just do it in the box.
Yeah.
Like, who cares? Oh, I have a computer that makes sounds like that. Who gives a crap?
They've rented a $10,000 Roland Jupiter 8.
Yeah.
This is the cream of the cream. This is arguably the greatest synthesizer of all time. And this was like the real analog one. We had a $10,000 keyboard sitting in our studio for this record. And it didn't get used. And basically it was like, yeah, that's a sweet keyboard, but let's get those cymbals splashy.
Yeah.
We were like, okay, all right.
Does it even pay off in the end? Are you like, okay, I see what you were doing there? Or you're like, it still sounds like a snare drum.
Well, I think it pays off, but I just don't realize it. Like I'm not going to quote Tim Pagnotta here, but if he hears this, I hope I got it right. His kind of theory is when you're recording drums, that's when you need all this expensive gear that everyone keeps talking about. You want to get the vintage Neve strips and the fancy mic. He says, if you one thing you have to get right, it's drums. So I just trust people like him to say that. And he's right. His drums do sound a lot better than my drums that I do in my home. So I think there is some fairness to it, but it's just super annoying to be around.
There is something. I mean, there is something where when you're in the studio and you're listening to, they've got the sound dialed in. You're like, that sounds amazing. Yeah. Like you're sitting in the control room and Jer, our drummer's playing the drums. You're like, that sounds incredible. Or they'll get a bass sound dialed in and you'll listen to Daryl play the bass and you're like, I've never heard like a bass sound that good. And then when you're listening to the mixes or when you're listening to a board mix, like things are starting to come together. You're kind of like, it just sounds like a song. Like it's like I don't listen to I'll Wait or Salvation and go like, the snare like has such an expansiveness. Like it's, once you kind of get it together, it sounds like a song. But I think sort of what Simon was saying, that all these things kind of go underground. You're not consciously processing like, oh, the treble, at 8K kilohertz of the bass is really giving me like emotion. But the overall feeling, I think, is affected by all these things.
With Tim, beyond very minute details on the drum sound, as a collaborator, is that what? Did you guys bring him in for that? Did he play that kind of role, or when it comes to the actual crafting of the song? Know what I mean? Were you looking for him to be more hands off?
Tim's pretty tip to tail. Like compared, like some producers will sort of be like, bring me the song, I'll record it, and then take it to the mixer, and here's my job. And Tim wants to like talk about the album artwork and like almost like not quite, but like what we're gonna say in interviews. He wants to hear demos, and then he wants to work on the song before it's recorded. Then he wants to record. Then he wants to talk to the person mixing it. Like he cares very much about the album and is like excited about it being in the world. He's not kind of there to put his week in and then I'm done and good luck. He wants to see it grow and live.
And on the business side of things, this is your guys' first record on your own label. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe this is the first record you guys are putting out on your own label, which, again, correct me if I'm wrong, the name of the label, Up on the Mountain Records?
Underneath the Mountain.
Yep. Records, sorry. Yeah. I was kind of wondering, like, it's one thing, a lot of bands do that, create their own imprint or, their own label to release under. But what does that mean in a practical sense? What does it mean in a real world sense? Like, what goes into creating your own label? Why did it make sense for you guys? And why did it make sense for you guys to do it?
I would just like to start off this question by letting you know that you're literally talking to the two worst people about that. There's like a rule in the band where you never send Simon and Dave alone to do anything because we won't figure it out. We never take a car together by ourselves. We're not trusted with anything. So to answer your question, Dave, you can speak for yourself on this one, but I have absolutely no idea the advantages or disadvantages. I never read the emails. So
Dave, can you shine your light on?
We have had the advantage over the years of sometimes you're looking at different ways that you could maybe sign a label deal, and you're like, well, in this one we get to own the masters, and we get a higher percentage, but maybe it's a little less money up front, and you have these choices, and we often have been able to kind of bet on ourselves and said like, okay, let's own more of this. Let's retain more percentages. And this is kind of an extension of that, especially in Canada where we've had an established career for a long time. We've been able to work with a lot of people that we want to work with, maintain the kind of independence that we want to maintain, and work with some great partners at the same time. So having our own imprint is an extension of that. We're also working with E1, so the sort of underneath the mountain is in partnership. That's not a technical term, but the two are sort of working together, and they're a great team. So we're psyched to be working with them too.
Do you guys envision this being like a label where you're signing other bands, or is it something that mostly exists on paper just for the purpose of owning your own music? You know what I mean?
It's always been a dream of mine to run a label. I would love to do that personally. We're just unbelievably busy with the Strumbellas right now, and a lot of us have young kids and stuff. So I think that's kind of like a far off dream. But if this could be spun off into something where I have a little office and occasionally send Simon checks from all the cool label head work that I do that he doesn't know anything about, then that would work out well for me.
Kind of on the topic of labels here, and we're sitting in Chris Taylor's office. I just coincidentally interviewed Chris only a couple weeks ago for an article in the magazine on the evolution of streaming's impact on the business side of the industry and that kind of stuff. One of the things that Chris and I got talking about was how streaming has impacted kind of the release strategies for music. He's always telling the artists that are on E1 or that E1 manages, essentially kind of do what you want if that's what you want to do, but if you want to maximize listeners, you want to maximize impact and kind of keep your music top of mind and get as many people hearing as possible. The reality is, in the streaming paradigm, kind of just keep releasing singles and EPs or just kind of keep releasing small batches of music rather than kind of do the big release that may get a lot of attention for a couple weeks and then disappear. At least that's the threat of it. So because E1's distributing that, I know Chris's thought process now on this. Did you guys kind of have that conversation? Is that something that came up, I guess, when it came time to actually be like, all right, how are we going to put this thing into the world?
No, I didn't read those emails again. I'll be honest. The reason why, every band member has a say. I trust my bandmates and my manager 100% to make the right decisions for this band. I stay out of that. But what sold me on signing with E1 is I just had dinner one night with Chris Taylor, and then I was like, you know how you can tell the vibe? And Chris Taylor, I really liked him. Super honest, nice guy, and so that's why my decision was to sign with E1, just because I liked him a lot.
On the streaming question, we have had a bunch of those discussions about whether it would make sense to even release an album at all, or is the album the last thing you release after you've put out a bunch of singles? Yeah. And I think that this makes, if you're thinking about Drake, I think these things make a lot of sense. I don't know if it makes a lot of sense for a band like us. And I mostly my sense is that the paradigm is still shifting and being created, and sometimes we'll have a discussion, we'll have a meeting with people where they're like, oh, definitely you have to put out 4 singles before you even think about putting out an album, and then 3 weeks later we're thinking about it in a different way. So my sense is that these things are evolving. So I don't doubt Chris's expertise. Obviously he has much more experience with it than I do. But I don't feel like it's been settled, and I feel like the paradigm might be different for different types of artists, and we'll see. Maybe we'll find for our next album or our next creative endeavor that it looks different. But my sense is that it's still pretty open. Things are still changing a lot.
Simon, excuse me. You mentioned when kind of the recording process started for this, and you're talking to Tim, and you're essentially saying, I'm not in a good headspace, I'm not going to be around here for a while. I've seen you in past interviews talking about battling stress and anxiety and that kind of thing. I guess I kind of just want to throw out this topic generally, but also speaking, when you do have big commercial success, in the one sense, you may think it helps alleviate that. You know, it alleviates financial stress. It helps give you more freedom, or it can compound it, that kind of thing. So I'm just wondering, like, for you, like, how have you been dealing with the last couple of years, and like, where's your headspace at these days, and like, how are you doing in that regard? Know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good question, man, because, you know, I definitely go through some, you know, depression and mental health stuff, but, and I'll be honest, the road is hard for me, and I do struggle a lot with that, playing big shows and doing all these things. How to get through it? I meditate. I try to exercise. I bought myself an English bulldog.
Nice.
Which is a great companion. And ultimately, I just keep a picture of my family in my wallet and look at it all the time and say, you know what, I'm here for my kids. Yeah. And even through all the depression and all maybe the sadness I've experienced in life, you know what I truly, truly want to be here for is I love making songs. I am a song junkie. I don't care how a band, I mean, I do care about how a band makes a song, but ultimately it fascinates me how human beings can create these things on audio that make my whole heart flutter and make me think about who I am and make me see the world in a different way and make me feel sad or happy. I ultimately just love songs. And that's, so when I'm sitting there and I'm depressed, or, you know, I get really happy too. I'm not bipolar, but like I go through spurts of where I get like the band will get 10 emails from me in one day saying, guys, here's an idea for t-shirts. Guys, let's do this for the album cover. Guys, what do you think of this? And then they won't hear from me for 2 months. So in through all that, bottom line is I just hope after, like before I leave this world, that I get a lot of songs out to people and people enjoy it. That's the bottom line. I think of myself as like, I'm not comparing myself to this person, but like Indiana Jones. I'm just seeking artifacts. Like artifacts are songs to me. Like I want I'm not saying I'm Indiana Jones. I mean,
because earlier I was like, I'm not saying I'm comparing ourselves as to Paul McCartney, and then like I thought you were gonna go with a famous musician.
Yeah. No, and like, you know how Indiana Jones is always on the hunt for the next artifact? I am always on the hunt for the next cool song. That's my life in a nutshell.
Sorry, I'm just laughing at Dave's reaction. Kind of on that topic, did you? The name of the label is escaping me now. They have a killer roster, but it's headed by Menno from Colorado.
Yeah, Royal Mountain?
Yeah, Royal
Mountain, yeah.
Did you see the thing recently? The Star wrote about it. Ben Rainer and the Star wrote about it, and they've been getting a lot of kudos for it, rightfully so, that they've started this essentially a mental health fund for their artists, essentially saying every act or every artist on the label has access to $1,500 to use on mental health. That's non-recoupable. It's private. You don't even have to tell the label what you're using it for or whatever. It's just there for your well-being, which is awesome. Like they're getting a lot of kudos for that, and it seems to be a positive step forward in this more open conversation about those kinds of things. Again, this isn't even really a question, but just kind of throwing the topic out there is like, hey, did you see that? And is that a sign that that conversation's changing in the industry and that is necessary for artists to be more open about this?
I hadn't heard about this. I've met Colorado a couple times, and they were super nice guys. And I would just like to say publicly, wow, kudos to them. That's amazing. I didn't hear about it until now, and I think that's super great. I don't know if things are changing. It seems to me that there's people just committing suicide all the time right now in this industry, and it's blowing my mind. What Royal Mountain Records doing sounds amazing to help that kind of thing. So to answer your question, I just don't know. Yeah. I don't know where things are going to go from here. I don't know. The connection between mental health and good art is super fascinating to me. Mm-hmm. My 3 favorite musicians all killed themselves before the age of 30. So I don't know how to say it. Like, I think it's weird that that's my 3 favorite musicians all committed suicide before 30. Do I support that? No, but I have this weird fascination with it. So I don't know how to answer that. Can you try to say what I'm saying better. Like, why is that?
Yeah, I don't want to compare myself to Iron Man exactly, but okay. So not to like armchair psychologize Simon, although I feel, but mental health is something that we're all of us in the band are fascinated by, that all of us in the band care a lot about, and I think you feel a lot about it, and a lot of your like songwriting is about it. But I don't know if like you or I or Daryl and I or anything have ever sat down and said like, all right, here are 3 policy positions that we think the provincial government should get behind. Like I don't know if you know, I think we want to talk about mental health, and we want to talk directly to people who are listening to our music through our music. I don't know if like, I don't know. I'm just trying to think about this. Can you explain it, what I mean better than I am? I think you feel a lot empathetically for people, and you put these vibes out through your music. And sometimes people write to us and say, I was going through a really tough time and I heard your record and it helped me a little bit. And that means the world to us. And I don't know if we have like specific policy proposals or specific like, oh, here's how OHIP should manage, you know, mental health. But that does sound amazing. Like the Colorado, that's, and it does seem like it's much needed. I don't know why people in the music industry feel so alone. Like, Kathleen Edwards was just tweeting about feeling like incredibly anxious about, she's going off to start a new album project, and she's amazing. I don't know why she would doubt herself, but we all feel this way creatively. So I think, yeah, when you think and feel about it, it goes into the music. But but that sounds incredible what they're doing.
Yeah, it does.
And I guess this relates to that, but it's been pointed out the new record just feels more, in the topic matters, it just seems like a more optimistic record than Hope. They both have that, you know, all the sonic qualities we've been talking about that carry over the big anthemic choruses and gang vocals and that. But just on the topic matter of the record, it's been pointed out it's a bit more optimistic record. Or you could say, you know, 50% less death and existentialism. Is that just a reflection of where your headspace was at that time period when you were writing the songs? Was that a conscious thing for you? Essentially, is there a reasoning behind that?
Not 100% less death than existentialism, though. I think that's the key.
It was conscious. The first 3 records were very much about me and my personal demons, and I consciously said, okay, let's just, like, as a challenge, hey man, can you write about any other stuff? So that was it, and so it was conscious to try to lighten it up a bit. It still still snuck in there for a portion of it, but
like on some level, you get the song you get, right? Yeah. I mean, like you're sort of thinking to yourself like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I could write songs like this? But then when you write it, it just comes out.
Yeah, and that's very true. And part of the record, a good hunk of it is truly just a message to my wife, to hopefully express to her how she saved my life. You know, I love when people are in love. And I know that sounds cheesy, and I've never used the word love in a song because I can't do it without being cheesy. But like, I just wish there was some way I could like write her a letter and say, I just want you to know that I lived a life full of turmoil inside of me, and the saving grace was you. That was what I was trying to get across to her on this record. And then throw in some death and some existential stuff on line 3 and 4.
The first part of that was beautiful. I know we have to wrap up here in a minute. Dave, there's actually something I've wanted to ask you since we last spoke. We did a phone interview for the podcast, like around when Spirits was, you know, doing its thing. And I remember something I always remember you saying is like, there's another song on the record that we thought was going to be the big one. Was that We Don't Know? Or essentially, I've just been curious ever since, like, because you declined to say what song you were talking about at the time, but you're like, Spirit's not the one that we thought was going to do this. So I've been curious ever since what that song was.
Yeah, it was We Don't Know. That was a good guess. And I mean, it is really hard to be objective. I don't know if like I'm fascinated by whether people who have made hit songs know that they're making them, and so anytime I come across someone who worked like on Alanis's Jagged Little Pill or on Ho Hey or like on these kind of big worldwide records, I'm like, did you know? And most of the time people say that they don't. Like most of the time people are like, it just seemed like another day at the office. And Ellie Greenwich, one of my favorite songwriters from the 60s, said, and she has just a ton of hits. She said the only one she ever knew was Leader of the Pack. She knew that one was going to be a big hit. But anyway, so I think it's very normal not to know, or like not to have the perspective as the artist about what your own best work is. But there was something about We Don't Know where we felt like it most perfectly captured the sound that we had in our head. I think like that was the one where we imagined it to be a certain way, and then it became that way, and we were very, very happy with it. But obviously, the way Spirits went all around the world, like it makes you kind of look back on it and go like, maybe it is better. Like we can't be objective about it. So I mean, I certainly now see like in some ways, like I listen to Spirits and I think, oh, maybe this is what people are seeing in it, or maybe this is what people like about it. But we'll never be able to be like objective about it, I think.
And on that note, another surprise from our last record was a fan favorite was Shovels and Dirt. So we started to play these songs around the world, and we'd be playing in Switzerland, and everybody would know Spirits-ish, but not many people would know We Don't Know. But then we started to see like everybody was singing along to Shovels and Dirt. So we were like, oh, well, that's cool. We'd never anticipated that'd be a song that people caught on to and learned and sang with us. Yeah. So you never know.
Yeah,
sounds good.
It's a crapshoot.
Reminds me of one other thing. I'm going to break the fourth wall here and ask Amanda, do we have time for one more question? All right. Again, I was listening to Hope over the last little while. I just read something recently, an article with Lucien Grange, the CEO of Universal Music Group. He had said something in this article I was reading recently about how, and again, it was another thing I was talking to Chris about in that interview, but that was like the impact of smart speakers and the way people interact with smart speakers and how that impacts the discoverability and marketing of music and all that kind of stuff. And so Lucien Grange had said something he's telling artists is like, to make your songs easier to identify and then pull up for smart speakers is make the song title a line from the chorus. Because most people are just going to say, when they want to hear a song, they don't necessarily know the title of the song. They're just going to say the chorus, know what I mean? Yeah. And why that relates to you guys is I was listening to a song I already mentioned, War, off of Hope. And if you were listening to that song, you would think the name of the song was going to be, Born to Be This Way or something along those lines, know what I mean? Maybe that would then just get confused with the Lady Gaga album. But all this just to ask, like, is that something that matters to you guys? In the sense that, like, are you open to that kind of suggestion? Or you're like, no, I wrote the song, I want to call it this, I'm going to call it this. Or you're like, the song's what matters, what the title is doesn't matter. All just to say, what's your thoughts on that?
Great question. And we do have these conversations, and 99% of the time, the band just unanimously agrees that the title of the song should be that line.
So something jumps out at you as like being, oh, that's clearly like the main idea or the main line or the keyword or whatever.
So 99%, but we did have an interband dispute. This is hot Strumbellas gossip.
Yeah.
We have a song on the record called Running Scared, and then in Desert Song. And I was the one who was like, guys, this song is called the Desert Song. And everyone, and most of the band, it doesn't matter who, most of the band was like, we're not calling it the Desert Song because you say Running Scared throughout the whole song. The song has to be called Running Scared. And I was like, no, guys, we're gonna be artsy, we're gonna be vibey, like, and no, we're gonna call it the Desert Song. It's gonna be cool and unique. So ultimately, the answer is the song is now called Running Scared, brackets, the Desert Song. So we're both equally unhappy.
They say that's a definition of compromise when both sides are unhappy. Anyways, guys, I've really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for doing it. The new album, again called Rattlesnake, out March 29th. It's an awesome record. It's a great follow-up to Hope, and I hope it goes on to be even bigger, and you guys keep reaching those new heights that you're striving for. And thanks for just having this conversation.
Ditto. Thanks a lot. We really appreciate being here.
You really prepare for these things. It shows. Yeah.